Hello, everyone. I'm Brendan Marcello, joined alongside Michael Niziolek. This is the Auburn Undercover podcast presented by WeHaveDonuts.com. That's DOUGH nuts.com, a proud sponsor of the Auburn Undercover podcast, delivering donuts all across the state, mainly in the Birmingham area. Make sure and visit their website, WeHaveDonuts.com, for more information on how you can pick up their donuts. Now available at Prevail Union coffee shops in Montgomery and Auburn, and also some pop-up locations near Birmingham. Go to WeHaveDonuts.com for much more information. I don't believe we recorded a podcast last week, and if we did, it was after Auburn picked up two big basketball wins by double digits. Auburn football players participated in the Senior Bowl. Well, some of them did, at least, that showed up. And recruiting's coming to a close with National Signing Day just a week and a half away. But first, I mean, the hot topic right now is basketball. Auburn's up to number 11 in the Associated Press poll, their highest ranking since 2000, I believe, Mike. And they get up there thanks to, one, several teams losing ahead of them last week, and two, impressive double-digit wins at Missouri on the road, and then coming back home and just completely obliterating LSU.
Yeah, the Missouri win was probably the more impressive of the two. LSU didn't really look ready to play after that opening barrage. They kind of hung their head a little bit, didn't put up much fight, especially in the second half. They had Anthony McLemore and Horace Spencer both in foul trouble, and still, I had two guys that were 6'10", above 6'10", and couldn't get anything done. Missouri, they go into and just, pretty much dominate them in the second half and kind of walk away from that one with a pretty impressive win over a team that had some good wins as well. So that's what I thought. I thought Missouri was the more impressive of the two.
Yeah, Missouri, tough place to go play. Missouri's kind of been on the bounce back this year, and then they've actually suffered a couple of losses last week. First to Auburn, and then they went to on the road at Mississippi State and lost. Mississippi State being one road game that Auburn's also won as well. Auburn's just kind of, it's interesting. The week before, Auburn had been getting off the slow starts, falling behind. And then last week, it was pretty much just them controlling the entire game, maybe except for the Mizzou game. They just kind of pulled away there late, but it was never a question of whether Auburn can come back from a big deficit because they seemed to control of both games.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I just got asked today about how is there a weakness to this team, and I think teams haven't figured out that you can't match them when they go crazy from beyond the 3-point arc. You have to just get what you can get and kind of weather the storm because, man, after that LSU that start, they didn't look back, and it seems like every game there's a stretch where they're just going to launch it from three, and they have the shooters that I don't know. I think it's impossible to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, there was one stretch there against LSU. I mean, there's a couple, but there was one stretch there where they're running up the court and just one pass three-pointer. And, we talk about who's the best player on this team, and, Mustafa Heron was named co-SEC Player of the Week, but I think the best player on this team is Bryce Brown, in my opinion, just because you can count on him to hit three-pointers in every game. I saw a stat where he's hit multiple three-pointers in every game since mid-December. Mustafa Heron's off and on. He's been more off than on, really, until these last 2 or 3 games. But Bryce Brown's been the consistent one as far as from scoring and really getting them sparked beyond the arc.
Well, and he's on the way to set the single-season record for three-pointers for Auburn. I had this in a story the other day, and it's not even close. He doesn't have to average near a season average to do it, and he hit above that against LSU. I mean, if he continues that kind of pace, he could break it with games left to play in the regular season, not even counting the tournaments. And he's shooting one of the best. I mean, that leads the SEC. I think he's averaging like 3-something a game, and his shooting percentage is in the top 10 as well from 3-point range. So, and then you have the defense improvement on top of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. Yeah, I was surprised about Mustafa this week, considering he really had, he had 16 points in that early going, and sure, he played really well, but didn't score again until there was like 4 minutes left, and hasn't been an even, I guess it's just about what other players do too, if they stand out. But certainly I thought all their players have played better than Mustafa, even recently than for this team.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, Bryce Brown has hit 72 3-pointers. He's hitting at a 40% clip beyond the arc, which you would think leads the team, but actually does not. Jared Harper is at 40.8%. And Chuma Okeke, sure he hasn't taken as many 3-pointers, but he's at 42.6%.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite incredible. And then meanwhile, Mustafa Heron, who's only taken 19 more 3-pointers than Chuma, believe it or not, is shooting 31.5% beyond the arc, which is interesting to me. If you had to rank the players from maybe 1 to 3, who are the 3 top players in order, you think, right now for Auburn?
Bryce, Deshaun, Jared. I think that's what I had last month when I did a top 10. I think it's pretty much the same. I think the only really big mover and shaker probably is Anthony McLemore's kind of really dipped lately.
Yeah, the fouls.
Yeah, and that's probably still the top 3. Then you could interchange Jared, I think, and Deshaun in certain games, depending on matchups. Like against LSU, Jared probably was a little more important just with the way they kind of shut down Tremont Waters. But in other games, Deshaun just kind of does everything. So, but those are your top 3, I think, no question.
If you go to KenPom.com right now, which is a great website, Anthony McLemore ranks number 2 nationally among all players in block percentage. As far as minutes on the court, at 17.6%, number 2 in the entire country. Pretty good average there, but it'd be even nicer for Auburn if he could stay out of foul trouble. He was incredible at Mizzou. What did he have? 6 blocks in that game. Didn't really need him against LSU. I mean, Auburn just pounced on him, and LSU just quit. But look at Jared Harper. He's kind of been the spark for them off and on this season, whether it's starting a run in the second half when they really need it, or just dishing out assists. He's done a great job of almost quietly dishing out these assists because a lot of them are 3-pointers. They're not like what you're maybe accustomed to seeing as a basketball fan, where he's dishing passes and the guy's getting a layup or whatever. He's just hitting wide open guys with shoot threes and everything. And some long range jumpers.
Yeah, and I mean he's done with the coaching stuff. He's asking, he's put the team first and not worried about kind of what he's going to get offensively. And he's done that all season. He's had a couple of games where kind of turnovers ended up, but that's what point guard's going to happen. But he still found a way, even in bad games, he still found a way to be contribute. So I think the coaching staff is very pleased kind of just with his development and what him buying into what they've asked of him. Because it's a big change when you're kind of the offensive leader, or, shoot first point guard, and to go to say, look, that you could shoot sometimes, but you have to be looking for your teammates first. So
yeah, another little stat here about Jared Harper, a couple of them. He's 32nd in the nation in free throw rate. Which takes in a lot of variables, which means he gets the free throw line often when he has the ball, and also he's hitting them. This is among 2,147 players nationally, by the way. He's number 32 and also number 70 in assist rate when he is on the court. Pretty good rate. And when you look at Auburn overall, their numbers, obviously they're number 11 nationally in the polls and everything. A lot of folks have them number 2 in their bracketology right now, but their efficiency on offense and defense just continues to improve. They're number 10 nationally offensively, number 31 nationally defensively, and a lot of that has to do just with how they've started this SEC season, which has been quite incredible. I'm looking at it now. Only one opponent has scored more than 80 points, and that was Tennessee, and Auburn beat Tennessee by scoring 94. Auburn has scored 90 points or more 3 times already in the SEC. Which is incredible, including the last 2 games. And they're holding opponents to about that 70-point range, which you do that, you're going to win a lot of games in the SEC, because a lot of teams in the SEC nowadays are trying to run up and down the court.
Yeah, it's amazing. I put this in the story today, and Bruce kind of mentioned it that as good as they've been, 2 games and they're tied for sixth place. So margin of for error right now is not very high. They can't really rest on their laurels, um, especially with games again. Even after this week against Kentucky, at Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. Um, they're going to definitely have some work still to do, even though they've done so well. And, obviously, I think they're an NCAA tournament team, no question, but for the conference and for seeding, still plenty of work to be done to lock up one of those high seeds and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, even this game, as people are listening to this on Tuesday night at Ole Miss, man, that's not a gimme. Ole Miss has been pretty good at home. You actually look at their games; they're beating teams at home. And then the losses have been close ones, overtime losses, losses by one possession, and they haven't been a whole lot of losses at home. But that's how they're losing games, and they're coming off a bit of a high after they knocked off, I believe, Texas A&M. They've knocked off Mississippi State at home, their rival, and Mississippi State's pretty good this season. Texas A&M's kind of gone in the tank a little bit, though. They seem to be showing some life here of late, even though they got blown out Kansas in the Big 12 challenge. At least they fought back in that game. They had been laying down for a lot of opponents. But Ole Miss, let's remember, Ole Miss led Auburn by 10 points at halftime. And in fact, we talk about the Georgia game where Auburn was down 14, then came back. But that Ole Miss game seemed kind of different to me, just watching it. It felt like Ole Miss was just dictating everything. And Auburn was going to have a very hard time trying to come back because Ole Miss is the team that plays their style of basketball. And yet they were the ones who were dictating what they could do offensively and defensively. And when you do that with a similarly paced team, that makes things more difficult to come back against. Georgia, on the other hand, likes to slow it down. And you just knew that if Auburn can get on a run, chip into it, maybe they can get within a possession or two. But I thought that Ole Miss comeback victory was more impressive earlier this season than maybe the Georgia one. And I think that very much stacks up with what I believe Tuesday's going to be a very tough game for them on the road at Ole Miss.
Well, the last time they played, obviously, Ole Miss didn't have their leading scorer, DeAndre Burnett,
Right.
And that made a difference. I mean, Ole Miss was playing really well, and I thought had Auburn on sort of the fence and, ran out of steam a little bit just because you're playing out with your best player, your best, easiest guy that can get to the bucket. And, at some point you just kind of run out of steam. And Ole Miss is a place where Auburn just has historically in the last 10 years played really, really bad basketball. Last year was about as bad as losses you can have.
Yeah, that was bad.
I don't know if it was 28 or 32 was the lead, whatever it was. Second half, not great. And, they've excised those demons so far this year against teams that they haven't played well or lost to last year or lost leads. And, Bruce said that he's not making any big deal out of it. That happened last year and not talking about it because they kind of worked on a lot of those things throughout the season, off season about, tempo and transition defense and playing smart. But something that'll be in the back of their mind, and especially Ole Miss, that they know they can beat this team.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to watch Tuesday night. We talked about the NCAA tournament. I mean, you would say Auburn's a lock. They still got to win some games. I would say there's like a magic number for Auburn. I think it's 3 more wins where they get just above 500 in the SEC. Be 10-9, or 10-8 in the SEC. Going into the SEC tournament, I think that would lock Auburn up for an NCAA tournament bid. But with these games remaining, they could continue. I don't know if they could get to a 1 seed line unless they just, won out, including the SEC tournament. Then again, maybe some of these teams ahead of them nationally lose a few games and Auburn maybe only loses 1 or 2, and who knows. But with the caliber of opponents remaining on the schedule, there's not that top 10 or top 15 team up there. Now, the SEC is strong. A lot of teams are in the top 70 in the RPI and all that. But if you look at the rankings, I go by the KenPom rankings quite a bit more than the RPI. I mean, Auburn's number 6 right now in the RPI, but they're number, let's see here, 9, I think. Yeah, number 9 in KenPom. They've only got two top 25 opponents left, according to that, and that's Florida at 21 and Kentucky at 25. Florida on the road, of course. Auburn's favored in every game, save for the Florida game, actually. The Arkansas game on the road, believe it or not, they're favored to win by 60%. I would think that maybe Auburn would not be favored in that game, but depends on how Arkansas plays these next couple of weeks. Lots to be determined, of course, but I think this is an important week for Auburn just because these are two teams that they can beat and should beat with Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, especially Vanderbilt at home. But if they were to lose to Ole Miss, it's obviously not the end of the world. But if they lose both games, then you got to start talking about how far they fall in the seeding list for the NCAA tournament because, I think Auburn's a team that's built to make it to the second weekend just if they get hot shooting. But I don't know if they can do it if they're like, say, below the 5 seed line. I think they've got to get a favorable matchup that first day. I don't think they can play a couple of close games and kind of maintain in that tournament setting the hot shooting. So I think seeding's going to obviously be very important for Auburn going down the road. And if they want to keep that top 5, top seeding, they've got to beat teams like Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, whether it's home or away.
Yeah, I keep forgetting they have 2 against South Carolina, which is a team that has played up to its competition, and one of those is on the road.
Carolina's hard to figure out.
Yeah, and then 3 of those games, so they have South Carolina away, Alabama home, Florida, and Arkansas away, and the Arkansas is the 4th one of those 4. So like you said, that's a tough stretch to have that to finish. So it's going to be up and down, and they're obviously going to lose some games. But these are 2, like you said, that they should have, and so you can kind of protect yourself. But I mean, even if they finish 500, you're probably talking, and they win a game or 2 in the tournament, you're talking they could flirt with a 4 seed. If it's right against the competition,
even if they finish 500, yeah.
Because you're looking at losses maybe if you finish 500, you lose to Florida, Alabama, and Kentucky. Those are teams are all going to make the tournament. So
right, yeah. I didn't think of
that. If you lose to Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M or something, maybe it's different. But maybe it's not because then you beat Kentucky.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So it just depends. I mean, they've got a nice body of work so far. So
absolutely.
I don't think that the Alabama loss stings a little bit just because they would have had even more protection. But
I keep thinking back to that game, and I know I'm going to sound crazy, but I almost believe that they would have been better position in that game if Colin Sexton had played, because that's what they prepared for. And then Alabama did some different things. They didn't quite know how to counteract it. Plus, Auburn went cold, as it does every now and again. Still managed to get within a possession, but
when you have the best player on the floor, that does give you an advantage. So
you would think, but I also think it takes something away from Alabama during stretches in games.
Yeah, but if he goes for 40, makes life easier.
No combating that.
So we'll see. It'll be interesting when he plays that game and how emotional he is to try to get their team a win. When he doesn't want to be the reason they lose that second one. Yeah,
that could be a big night for Auburn. They'll be celebrating the Iron Bowl win. The Alabama school president will be coming down and singing the Auburn fight song. That'll be fun. Didn't happen, when was that? 4 years ago because of quote-unquote weather. The student president wouldn't come down because of the roads, even though the roads were okay. But that's neither here nor there. It was a big controversy. Who do you think is the toughest opponent remaining on the schedule? Just the one opponent, whether Auburn plays them twice or once remaining on this schedule.
Florida.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well,
I think Florida, if I had to pick a team that would win the SEC right now, it's Florida and not Auburn, because Florida's been able to go to Kentucky, beat Kentucky, has gone to Missouri, beaten Missouri, and now they get Auburn at home, and that gives them the coin flip advantage, if you want to say it's a coin flip type thing.
Yeah.
They've got those good wins. They're obviously just a game behind Auburn as it stands now, and they get Auburn at home. And Florida's gotten some of those tough games kind of out of the way already, except for Auburn.
And Kentucky's, I think, second. Kentucky's always a dangerous team just because, they're capable of playing poorly because they're so young and they have a tendency to need time to kind of gel. But at the same time, they knock off West Virginia.
Yeah, that was something. They were down huge in that game and came back.
Yeah, and they had some quality non-conference games. Some when they lost, some they won, but they're used to a big stage, and so I just think they're not going to get. Just with the talent level that they have, I think they're more talented maybe than Auburn, but just not as good of a team as Auburn.
Sure.
So it's always dangerous because, they're going to come in and have some talent. And if they have a good game, you're going to have a hard time. So
I would say Kentucky's the most talented team in the SEC. By far. And then maybe Florida's the second. And then Auburn's a close third at this point, just based off shooters. I mean, Auburn doesn't have, that big man you want, and usually you need that in the tournament if you want to get past the second weekend. But Auburn, just skill level, I mean, they might not be excessively deep. They've got 9 good players they can go to, but, man, they can shoot lights out at any time, and they've done it in every game this year except for one, and I think that's a Temple game where they really kind of shot lights out during one big stretch. And that's including the Alabama loss where they came back and almost had a shot to win that game in the final minute. So Auburn plays Ole Miss Tuesday, hosts Vanderbilt Saturday. Auburn actually only has back-to-back home games once remaining in this season, and that's this Saturday and then next Wednesday, Vanderbilt and A&M. And then after that, it's home away, and a couple of away games, or one set of away games back-to-back, and those are against the 2 toughest road opponents, Florida and Arkansas. So, tough stretch left, and that's why, as I said, these teams that they, quote, should beat, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, they got to win those games to keep their seeding very strong. Because for the first time in a very long time, Auburn fans can start talking about seeding and looking around the country and seeing where Auburn fits in the brackets, because it would take Auburn losing the remainder of their games, or all but 1 or 2 to not make it at this point. There's no way that happens. So on the football stage, not a lot going on. The Senior Bowl was last week. I went down there for one day. Gus Malzahn didn't say a lot. The spring practices start February 27th, which is a day earlier than last year. It just keeps moving up. Interestingly, Trey Matthews decided not to play in the game. Phil Savage, the executive director there, told me he was not 100% healthy, and he actually attended the Auburn LSU game that same afternoon, as the Senior Bowl, instead of staying in Mobile. Trey Williams stayed and played, didn't record a stat, I don't believe, as far as tackles. And Austin Golson played center a little bit, so obviously he's not showing up on the stat sheet. But the Senior Bowl is more or less set up for these players to show up on a Monday night, get interviews with NFL teams, and then Tuesday night interview with NFL teams, and then practice, and then play in the game. And for example, by Tuesday morning, when I was speaking to some of the Auburn players, a lot of them had already talked to about 15 NFL teams. So that's kind of what that's there for, is for these teams to get background on you. So when they start going to pro days and then obviously the NFL Combine, they know a little bit more about you. Playing in the Senior Bowl and what you do in the Senior Bowl really doesn't matter. Practices actually matter more than the game, interestingly. By the time Thursday arrives at the game site, there's no one in the stands as far as NFL personnel or scouts or anything like that. They all leave on Wednesday night. So not surprising that Trey Matthews pulled out if he's injured a little bit, if that's indeed the case, which is what the Senior Bowl was told. But not a lot of updates from Gus Malzahn when we talked to him. Recruiting still going on. Obviously, Auburn's still got about 3 spots left. They're still trying to sign offensive linemen. I'm not certain it's going to happen, or at least it's not going to be like a Calvin Anderson, that Rice graduate transfer. A lot of teams are going after him. They're fighting hard for him. Auburn may have came in a little bit too late there, so we'll see. And then also last week, Auburn released some of its revenue numbers. Their website, they wrote a story up and put some fake quotes in there. Well, alleged fake quotes, I should say. They're just quotes that people write out because that's not how human beings speak, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You don't speak like that. That's why Auburn is the best place for student athlete, or best, whatever it is the slogan is that Jay Jacobs using now and will soon be killed when Allen Greene takes over full time in a couple of weeks. But they they reported an operating surplus of $14.6 million. Record revenue, $147.5 million. It's interesting, these last 3 years they've reported revenue because before that they reported a deficit, and they took a lot of heat from fans about it. And Auburn's all like, well, it's not really a deficit. It just depends on how we report things. And ever since they got that fallout from that, they've been reporting revenues every year. Yeah. So it's funny how that works. But I think Auburn's got money because it's an SEC program, so don't worry about that. What I found interesting, looking through the papers that they finally gave us the day after they managed to put their own little story up that's just glowing about Auburn's revenues, is and if I sound cynical, it's because, well, Auburn's website's there to make everything look like it's amazing, and they don't report everything that's in the revenue report that's filed the NCAA. Gus Malzahn's total financial package during the 2016-17 year, which included bonuses and benefits, totaled $5.4 million. And, of course, this is well before his new contract, which is going to average out to $7 million before bonuses and benefits. The 9 assistant coaches at the time were paid $6.8 million, with benefits included and everything. Now, the other thing I found interesting was that Auburn paid $1.7 million in severance payments for football, $822,750 in basketball, and then a cool $10,980 in baseball. I don't know if that's the Sonny Galloway or the assistant coach he had or giving money to. I don't know where the hell that's coming from. But the severance payments in football caught my eye because I thought the Gene Chizik stuff was over with. At least that's what they were telling us a year or so ago. Also,
there couldn't have been an assistant that they had to pay.
That's what I was thinking, but they haven't fired anybody per se, unless we're looking way back to 2014 when Charlie Harbison, and Melvin Smith were both fired, and Ellis Johnson. So maybe Ellis Johnson's probably still getting some money there because he's not getting paid a whole lot at South Carolina as an analyst as it stands now. But I found that interesting. I reached out to Auburn asking for explanation as to who's getting this money or whatever, and they said they'd look into it, and it's Monday night now at 11:30, and I haven't heard anything. So maybe in 2058 I'll be able to tell you. But that's about it. Nothing really other than that stood out. They obviously also kind of bumped up the whole idea that they're spending all this money on new projects, which, they're saying they've invested $96 million in facility improvements that are, quote, currently in various stages of planning or execution. That includes new equestrian stuff, center, updates for softball, which don't even know what the stages are on that and when they would move forward with that, considering everything that happened with softball. Now they got a new softball coach. Baseball, which they haven't really started on. Obviously the new football facility that's attached to Jordan-Hare Stadium that they're building right now, and it's going to be open in the fall. I believe that's makes up more than almost half of that total package anyway.
Basketball locker rooms,
which were, how much was it? Like $3 million a piece or something like that for the men and women.
Yeah, it was in the story I did just about Bruce Pearl reacting to Greene's hire, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, they're doing a lot of new signage as well, and just some updating cosmetic things. Because the stadium's a little old now, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, so trying to get that fixed up.
Yeah. Well, it's only 8 years old now. But time flies. You know what's really old? The Jordan-Hare Stadium. and they need to do something with that.
Yeah.
And that's going to be up to Allen Greene.
Any update on his starting date?
No, I mean, no one will tell us.
Yeah.
His fill-in, his interim director at Buffalo, already started. So I guess he's spending like the next couple of weeks moving his family down here, and then 2, just kind of sitting around and listening to people and preparing to take over the day-to-day operations based off what we've been told. The president said mid-February, but we don't.
You think they'd be able to narrow that down now?
Yeah, well, I'm sure they have, but if you told the media anything, that means that the world will implode.
No.
You can't do that. You can't let the public know what you're doing, even if it's the simplest of things. Like,
Sure.
What day are you taking the trash out? We can't let anybody know. But it's just Auburn. Love it or hate it, they're just not going to tell you anything.
It's true.
But I keep saying this. It's just a matter of when they build a new football only complex for Gus Malzahn, because that's been talked about. And as much as President Stephen Lee says that he's got to be a good steward of the money, and we got other things to think about. Well, the reality is Auburn's fallen behind in the SEC with football facilities. They can pump up that kitchen, the wellness kitchen, as much as they want, but the kids aren't going there to hang out and go, man, this is really cool. We get to sit in chairs and have food fights.
I think it's more that it's the food that's the important, not the chairs.
Sure, but I don't think the kids care about the food.
A little bit. I think some of them like the food.
Sure, some of them do, but I'm going to tell you something right now. Football players are college students, and they still go to McDonald's.
Not the one on campus.
Is there one on campus?
Well, the one right by the Chick-fil-A.
No, they go there.
That's a terrible McDonald's.
Is it really? I think I've been through drive-thru once to get a frappe or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had the food there.
Really bad.
Well, there goes one sponsor.
McDonald's just sponsored us, yeah.
No one's ever going to sponsor us. Anything else you want to talk about? Anything pop culture you caught up with over the last week and a half or so that you wanted to discuss?
I think we discussed it a couple of weeks ago. That I just watched it too. Counterpoint, was that the show's name? Counterpart. Yeah, I watched the first 2 episodes. Really good, and what's his face? J.K. Simmons was tremendous.
Yeah.
Real good. Plays 2 versions of the same character, and they're basically totally different people, and it's really impressive how he goes about creating that with acting.
Is he dragging, or is he too fast? No one got that.
No,
I watched the first episode. I haven't watched the second one yet, but the first one was pretty good. So that was a good sign. So I'll catch up with it on the DVR at some point. But that first episode was pretty good. I saw The Post in theaters. That was a great movie.
Yeah, everybody's raving about that.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been better, but it's pretty good. The characterizations and it's very Steven Spielberg. You could tell he embellished, but that's what makes him Steven Spielberg, makes him a good faithful filmmaker.
Yeah.
But it's a great film, great editing, great camera work. There's like one scene where they're all in someone's house going over 4,000 pieces of paper, and there's like 5 reporters in there in this house trying to figure out which is which, and meanwhile one of the kids is going through there trying to sell lemonade to them for 50 cents a pop, and the mother's going in and out and all this, and the camera's like whipping around. It's pretty cool. But yeah, good movie. And then of course it ends with Watergate. So you could literally watch The Post and then pop in All the President's Men, and you just have yourself like a Washington Post cinematic universe marathon.
And there's a Mr. Show reunion, right? In there, did they have a scene together?
I knew Bob Odenkirk was in there, but I didn't know what's his name, David
Short.
Cross was in.
Cross, yeah, Short, not Cross.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the first scenes in the movie. They're standing side by side talking, and I'm like, "What the heck is this?" They got.
So they were in a scene together.
Oh yeah, several times.
Cool.
Yeah, they were kind of two of the lower level editors that were always in the meetings with Tom Hanks.
Weird that the Steven Spielberg movie, I would have never predicted that they would have been.
He had quite a few comedians in the movie.
Oh yeah,
he had goodness, what's his name? He's from in the Office and also Silicon Valley, kind of the tall, lanky guy.
Oh yeah, Jared in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I don't know his real.
He's in it. He plays a lawyer, actually.
Interesting. I could see that.
Yeah. What's his name? Is it Jesse Plemons? Is that his name?
The Friday Night Lights guy?
No. Maybe? I never saw that movie. He was in Breaking Bad. Yeah, Jesse Plemons. That's him. He's in it. He also plays a lawyer. And a lot of character actors you've seen through the years are in it, playing big parts. Like every face on the screen, you're like, I know who that is. I know who that is. I know who that is. So yeah, pretty good. And right under 2 hours, so it doesn't get too long. Very quick watch. Very good. It also makes you sad because you realize just how much resources they were putting into newspapers back then.
Yeah,
and journalism. And actually, the movie kind of hits on that because the Washington Post is about to go public, and they're worried about investors and all this stuff, and how many journalists should they employ, and can they add more, or should they cut back, and should this reporter actually be covering this, and where's the line there, and all that. So they dealt with that a little bit too in the movie. So it's pretty good. Still want to see The Shape of Water.
A lot of those just came out in the theaters around here, so they weren't even here before.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I saw a lot of them were at the theater, and I was like, wow, I need to catch up with these before they pull them out of the theater. But a lot of those movies that Auburn doesn't get, 3 Billboards.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see that. I think I could wait to see The Disaster Artist until it comes out on Netflix or something. But yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's great. That's about it.
That is.
Then Black Panther comes out in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think the review embargo should be up soon. I think it's the premieres tonight.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, it looks different. Just with like the style that he kind of brought, and they're kind of going further in that direction, letting directors have a little more room, especially after Thor.
That's good because Ryan Coogler is an amazing director.
Yeah, a lot of the trailer has a lot of music, and I think they've been pretty well cut together. But the characters obviously lesser known.
Right.
Characters,
but
certainly.
You know what? They started the cinematic universe with Iron Man, which was kind of a B-level superhero to begin with. But
yeah.
As long as it's a good movie, it's a good movie. And I love the look of it. As you said, it seems to have its own flair. It seems to have its own style and to it.
And people want to see the teaser for the Infinity Wars. So.
Oh, is that attached to it?
Well, I mean, just the post-credit scenes will be.
Yeah, you would think. Yeah, that's right.
Because it's the next one, so people will certainly be interested in that.
So, do you think Captain America will be in this movie since he's down there, or Bucky?
No, it's Bucky. Yeah, I think he is in it.
Oh, Bucky is in it.
I think so.
So he's out of ice. When he frozen in ice again, or something?
No, he was just hiding in Wakanda.
But isn't Steve Rogers hiding there too?
I just think he's hiding.
Okay, so he's not necessarily just hanging out there.
Yeah, he sent that letter to Iron Man and said that if they need him, he'll be around. But
oh, he did? I don't remember that.
Yeah, Civil War spoilers.
Yeah,
but if you haven't seen it by now, you're probably not going to see it.
Well, we didn't get any listener questions. No one cares. So that's it for the podcast.
Sounds good.
Everybody's just clamoring for answers. Just really interactive. Just interacting. That's all they want. Unless, I mean, they only want to be interactive. They want to call me a moron or call us stupid. But no questions. So we'll just end it. Thanks for listening to the Auburn Undercover podcast presented by WeHaveDonuts.com. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Brandon Marcello. Go to AuburnUndercover.com for complete coverage as the Auburn basketball team tries to remain atop the SEC standings this week, and recruiting winds down before National Signing Day on February 7th.